My name is Jasmine. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm so happy you're here. Yay! To be honest, I'm a little bit nervous because I'm not used to speaking to a camera, but I promise I will get better at this. Just give me a couple of videos, okay? Also, apologies for the constant lighting changes. I am filming this with my iPhone and it is cloudy outside. So for my first YouTube video, I really wanted to give you guys a pattern tutorial, and I thought, what better design than this super beginner friendly knit halter bralette. I love this because it's knit totally in the round and it's really flattering. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I've made a ton of these tops, and it's just because it's super easy to knit up and it's a great layering piece for summer. So first, let's get all of our materials together. For this project, you are going to need 1 skein of medium weight yarn, 5mm circular needles, and I like to use the 16-inch circulars because I feel like I can knit a lot faster when all the stitches are bunched up, which you'll see later. You are also going to need a 5mm crochet hook, and this is used for making the straps. A measuring tape. This is so cute. I got this from Daiso for like $1. A yarn needle so that you can sew in your ends and do the ruche section, which is this section here. And some scissors. Honestly, having cute supplies does make a difference, and I don't make the rules. Okay, next we have to take some measurements. So your first measurement is going to be around the widest part of your bust. So around the top of your boobs like this. When you have that number, write it down. That's your measurement A. The second measurement that we need to take is over the top of our boob. So this is going to determine how long your top is. It sort of depends on how much boob coverage you want. We're gonna add a little bit of length also to account for the stretch, but we'll get into that. Next, and I'm sorry to say it, we're gonna knit a gauge. So for all of my beginner girlies, this pattern is using something called negative ease, which essentially means that when you wear the garment, it's going to stretch. And the reason why the gauge swatch is so important is so that the finished garment stretches comfortably, but is also tight enough so that it doesn't slide around. So for the gauge swatch, we're gonna knit up a simple 10 stitch by 10 row swatch. You wanna make sure that you're using the same cast on and cast off method that you're gonna be using in your finished product. And that's so that you can get an accurate idea of how much stretch your piece is actually going to have. So I'll see you back in a few minutes. Okay, so if you saw in that clip there, I was using the long tail cast on method because it has a nice bit of stretch. And for the cast off method, I'm going to be using Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Cast Off. It's my favorite cast off method, especially when I need something that has a bit of stretch to it. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. To do Jenny's cast off, you're going to knit the first stitch, yarn over, knit the second stitch, and then you're going to insert your left needle into the 2 stitches and pull that last one through. Okay, so now we have 1 loop on our right needle. We're going to yarn over again, knit the next stitch, insert your left needle through these 2 stitches here, and slide them over that leftmost stitch. Okay, let's do it again. Yarn over, knit 1, needle through the 2 stitches, and pull that left one through. And then when you get to the last one, you're just going to do the same thing. Now that you just have this 1 loop left, just going to make the loop bigger, pull the tail through, and give it a little snip. That's our finished gauge swatch, and as you can see, very stretchy on both sides. Now it's time to measure our gauge swatch. So we're actually not going to measure it as it is, we're going to measure it when it's stretched. Remember how I mentioned negative ease and how we want the garment to be stretched when worn? So we're actually going to see how far our swatch can stretch. I like to pull it from the middle and not from the ends because the cast on and the cast off row tend to not be as stretchy as the actual knit part itself. And remember that we're basing our number of cast on stitches on the widest part of our bust. So it's okay if the cast on and cast off rows are a little bit tighter. So as you can see here, I can stretch my gauge pretty comfortably to 10 centimeters. So that's what I'm gonna write down. All right, it's time to calculate our number of cast on stitches. And this method is really easy. You're gonna take your measurement A, which was the width around the widest part of your bust, and you're gonna divide that by the width of your stretched gauge swatch. So in my case, I'm dividing it by 10, which comes out to 8.2. And then you're gonna multiply that by the number of stitches in your gauge swatch, which was 10 in this case. And this final number will be your total number of cast on stitches. So this worked out pretty easily because the stretch was 10 and the number of cast on stitches was 10. But let's say that the width of your gauge swatch was 9. That would give you 9.1. Again, you would multiply that by how many stitches were in your gauge swatch, which was 10, and that would give you 91 stitches as your number of cast on stitches. The coolest part about this is that your measurements and the measurement of your gauge swatch don't have to match mine at all. You can use this with any number and it will still work. Okay, yay, we finally get to cast on our piece. I'm using the long tail cast on method, and I've made this top so many times that I can just eyeball how much yarn I need for the cast on. A general rule of thumb is to measure out a tail that's 3 times the width or circumference in this case of your garment. And if you have a little bit too much at the end, you can just snip it off. When you're done casting on all of your stitches, you're gonna cast on 1 extra stitch because we're gonna use that to join in the round. First, you wanna make sure that all of your stitches are facing the same way. So you can see here, all my stitches are facing the same way. If yours looks something like this, you're gonna wanna make sure you fix that before you join in the round, or you're gonna be knitting up a twisted mess. So I find the best way to join in the round without ending up with a big gap or bar between your first and last stitch is to actually start with the tail and your working yarn on the right side. So all you're gonna do is you're going to insert your right needle through this first stitch on the left purlwise, slip that off of your needle. Then you're gonna take your left needle, slip it into this stitch, the second stitch on your right needle, and you're gonna pull it over the top of the first stitch and just drop it off of your needles. So now we have this big loop sort of hanging in the middle. To fix that, we're just gonna pull the working yarn and the tail nice and tight. And congratulations, you just joined in the round. So now we have our beautiful circle of stitches and we're ready to start knitting. This pattern is super easy. We're just gonna knit stockinette in the round until we reach our measurement B plus 4 centimeters or about 1.5 inches. And the reason for this extra length is that because when the garment stretches widthwise, it also gets a little bit shorter. So adding that little bit of extra length is gonna make sure that we still are getting all the coverage that we want. Okay, happy knitting. Go sit in front of the TV, listen to your favorite podcast, and I'll see you when you're ready to cast off. Welcome back. I hope you had fun knitting up your little tube. Now it's time to cast off. I like to start my cast off somewhat in line with where the tail is, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You can just eyeball it. At the end of your cast off, you're going to notice that there's this awkward gap between the start of your cast off and the end. So I'm going to show you how to close that up really easily. I just like to insert my needle into this little V shape here. Pull your working yarn through. Okay. And then pull that loop again through the loop that was on your needle. Then you can do the normal knot like this. A little snip. And your tube is done. Okay, now that our base tube is done, I'm gonna show you how to do the ruche part, and then we're gonna end with adding the straps. To start the ruche, we're going to take our yarn needle and string some of our yarn through. Now I like to insert the needle along the column where the two tails are, so you can sort of see here. What you're gonna do, you're going to insert the needle through the back of one of the loops, pull through a good amount of yarn. I'm gonna stretch it out so you can see a little bit better. But we're going to then insert our needle along the same column through the next loop. Still following along the same column, I'm gonna go back under that very next loop, then over the next one, then under, and you're just going to do this all the way down the column, going under and over the bars from each of your stitches. When you get to the end of the column, as you can see, I've done the over under all the way to the end. We are going to insert our needle through the adjacent column. So I'm just going to work into the one that's on the bottom here. Since my yarn is coming out the back, I'm going to insert my needle from the back. If you end your column with your yarn coming out on the top of the garment, you can just go over like this and insert the needle this way. It doesn't really matter, but you're just going to do the same exact thing, working over and under each stitch, all the way back down to the end of the piece. So I've worked my under over on these two adjacent columns, as you can sort of see here. I have my two ends coming out on the same side. And now to make the scrunch, you're going to hold the yarn with one hand and then just pull. As you can see, it made an asymmetrical ruche, and I really like symmetry, so I'm going to go back in and just using my hands, I'm going to make the ruche look nice and neat, and then pull again so that it's tight. So once everything is nice and pretty and to your liking, you're going to take those two ends that you were just pulling, and you're just going to double knot them together. This just helps to keep the ruche nice and tight. There we go. All right, I think it's time that we do a little try on of our tops, and that way we can get a better idea of where we want our straps to be. Okay, so this is what we're working with. And now we can get a better idea of where we want our straps to be. I like mine to be pretty wide because it creates a nice neckline shape. And if you have stitch markers, while the garment's on, you can place them wherever you want your straps to be. And then trying to be as symmetrical as possible, I'm going to place a stitch marker on the other side. There you go. To make the straps, we're actually going to be doing a simple crochet chain, but we're going to double up on the yarn. So pull out really long length of yarn. This is how long mine is. I always find it's better to have more than you need than not enough. Okay. So we have our doubled up length of yarn. We're going to make a slip knot right in the middle. This is the beginning of your strap. To attach the strap, we're going to insert our 5mm crochet hook wherever we want our strap to be. Pull the slip knot through and then just make your first chain stitch. You're going to keep going with the chain stitch until you make a strap that's long enough to comfortably tie around the back of your neck. When you've made a strap that you feel like is long enough, you're just going to pull the tail ends through and tighten. And there's your first strap. I'm doing the same exact thing on the other side, just crocheting a chain stitch until the strap is the same length as the other one. When both of your straps are done, the only thing left is to weave in your ends. This is the finished top. She turned out really cute. You have now completed your first bralette. Yay! This top really is just such a summer staple, and it's also the base of a lot of my other designs. So if you want to know how to make those, please leave a comment. Also, if you have any questions or there was something that you didn't understand in the video, please let me know. And of course, if you end up making this top, please tag me. It means the world when people make my designs, and I just love to see them. So I'll put my handles here in case you want to tag me. For those of you that have watched all the way up to this point, I just want to say a huge thank you. I have so many things that I want to share and talk about, and your support just means everything to me. So thank you. Okay, love you, bye.